Welcome back, everyone, to the Bears Probably Plays YouTube channel. Today is Saturday, October 5th, and it might not be the best slate of games for the NCAA this week, but I'm still going to fire off 10 total game picks and my 3 best player props for you guys. We're going to be looking at the 4 biggest games I think of this weekend, the 4 graphic plays. Then I'm going to have 6 more breakdowns towards the end of the video, and in between that, we're going to have 3 of the best player props for the entire slate on Saturday. Hope everybody enjoys their Saturday, and let's break down some ball. All right, guys, here's a recap graphic from Friday night. I'm recording at the halftime at TCU. Have them minus 16.5. They look horrible. This is the worst they've looked. Houston, back-to-back games getting shut out, 24 at the half against TCU. TCU has 6, and they missed the extra point. So TCU did start the game. Turnover on downs, interception. So they dug their own hole. I did take them plus 1.5 live. Probably going to screw me twice tonight, but who knows? Maybe it'll work out. Syracuse plus 7. They just kicked off. UNLV went 3 and out. We have Kyle McCord in that game over 303.5 passing yards against UNLV. And then Jordan James over 91.5 rushing yards against Michigan State. That game also just kicked off. So hopefully we can have at least a 3-1 day. I mean, you can hold out hope for TCU, I guess, but I won't be the one holding out hope for the minus 16.5. They got outscored by like 40 in the second half. So not looking great there. Update a leaderboard here. Nothing has changed. Still looking for the 3-1 day, though, on Friday. Let's get into some big games for Saturday, the biggest games that I think of the day. We're going to start with the top 10 matchup, top 10 team, I should say. Missouri going on the road to face off against Texas A&M at Kyle Field. The underdog is Missouri in this game, plus 2.5. Feels like the sharp play would be taking Texas A&M minus 2.5, but the problem is that everybody is taking A&M right now minus 2.5, thinking that they're smarter than the book. Usually, whenever you see a ranked team, top 10 on the road getting points, that's a pretty good sign to take the home team minus 2.5. But again, everybody's taking minus 2.5 right now, so I'm going to zig what everybody else zags. I'm taking Missouri here plus 2.5, and they're going to win this game outright. Texas A&M, they switched their quarterback. They've looked better with him in the system. I think his last name's Reed. Seems like he's a little bit more shifty. He seems like a little bit more reliable guy than Weigman was in the start of the season against Notre Dame. And while he's been a little bit better, they haven't been great. They're still 79th in the nation on offense. The defense, they're hovering around the top 10 right now. So this is not a bad team, not a good team. They're an average team. They're going to get the advantage of home field. That's going to help them a little bit, but I still can't get that Notre Dame game out of my head. Notre Dame, they're not a very good team this season. Texas A&M in the first game of the season, they looked horrible going up against that top-ranked opponent in Notre Dame, top 10. That's kind of what it feels like in this game. Notre Dame was a high-ranked team in the first game. They went to Kyle Field. They got the job done. I think that's going to be the exact same thing like game number 1. I do think it's going to be close in the first half, just like that first game. Then Notre Dame pulled out in the second half. I think Missouri's going to pull it out in the second half. They've got an explosive offense. They've got the best wide receiver on the field. They've got some really good skill players, and they have the best quarterback on the field. Brady Cook, while he hasn't been great this season, he is the best quarterback on the field in this game. The defense for Missouri this season, they're also very good. They're top 20 this season in total defense. They're top 40 in a lot of major categories on the defensive side. I'll take the Tigers here with the points. I do think they're going to win this game outright. 27-24 final score. Also, if this game was played at night, I think I'd take Texas A&M. You guys might not think that it matters, but I think it matters that you play at night compared to the day. Probably doesn't. It's just my dumb brain. But since it's a day game, since everybody's on Texas A&M, I'll take Missouri here, plus 2.5 as the play. For the next game on Saturday, we're going to be looking at Auburn going up against Georgia. This is a really, 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 really tough spot for Auburn. I wish that it wasn't Auburn playing Georgia because they're going to be the sacrifice. The only team that Georgia has lost to over the last 10-ish years in college football has been this Alabama team. They lost again last week. George Kirby's one of the best head coaches we've ever seen in college football. He had maybe the best second half of anybody we've seen in college football this season against Alabama in that second half of that game. But Georgia, they made the mistake last week coming out slow. They've been known to do that in the past. They came out slow. You cannot do that going up against one of the best teams in the country in their home building. The deficit was too much for them to come back from, but Georgia still gave them everything they can handle. They even took the lead with the final 2 minutes against Alabama in that game. They couldn't get it done, though. Now Auburn, coming off a devastating loss against Oklahoma at home last week. They were up by double-digit points with 6 minutes left with the ball. We had Oklahoma, by the way. Now they got to go up against Georgia, and this is not a good spot for Auburn. This is going to be an absolute bloodbath. Georgia's not going to come out slow in this game. They learned a mistake last time. I feel bad for Auburn. I really do. I was on the fence about how good Georgia was this season. That's why we had Alabama in the last game. But Georgia in the second half, they were the best team in college football this season. So Georgia's still Georgia. Auburn's still going to be Auburn in this spot, and they're going to get killed. Auburn's not that good anyway this season. Give me the Bulldogs, minus 22.5, 41-3. Sorry, Auburn. Sorry, Auburn fans. This defense is going to be crazy tomorrow. Give me Georgia minus 22.5 as the play. For the next play, we're going to have an upset alert. Ohio State going up against Iowa, plus 18.5 in favor of the Hawkeyes. I know there's probably a lot of Ohio State fans out there, and I think you've got a pretty good team. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because you haven't really played anybody yet this season. You're scoring nearly 50 points per game. Good for you guys. The defense has looked really good for you so far. And are we sure that you're a top 10 team this season in college football? Because the best opponent that you've played so far this season has been Michigan State, and I don't think Michigan State's that good. Ohio State struggled against Marshall in the first half. Well, they kind of struggled in the first quarter. Marshall had a couple of really good drives, though, in that game against Ohio State. A couple long touchdown drives, and I'm not trying to fluff the feathers either for the Iowa Hawkeyes because I know what this team is. They're going to run the ball every single play. They're going to try to play field position with Ohio State. I don't think they're that good either, but you're going to give me 18 points with the team who loves to play defense and loves to control the clock. I'm also not in love with Will Howard. I watched him for 4 seasons at Kansas State. I don't see why Ohio State went and got this guy. Ohio State's probably going to want to try to control this game as well on the ground. They've got some really good running backs. They've got a couple dual really good wide receivers, but this is going to be a low-scoring game, I think. Ohio State is going to have to throw the ball down the field, and that's not what Will Howard can do. I watched him at Kansas State for 4 years. He's looked decent going up against these really bad teams in the first 4 games, but Will Howard, he's going to crumble in this big game. I think Iowa can make things difficult for him. I think the defense is good enough. I think Iowa is good enough on the ground. Even though Ohio State does have really good rushing defense this season, they haven't played anybody. I think Iowa's going to muck this game up. I'm going to take them not to win the game, but I will take the points. 18.5, 17-20. Final score in that game. And for the final play of the day, we're going to be looking at a rematch of the national title game from last season. Doesn't feel like it because both these teams are completely different this season, losing a lot of their key pieces. It's going to be Michigan going on the road to face off against Washington. We know one thing about Michigan for sure. They can't throw the ball. They're going to put the ball on the ground 50-plus times in this game, relying on Mullins, relying on Edwards, relying on their quarterback to scramble around and make some plays. It's not possible, I think, in this day and age of football to not have a quarterback who can throw the ball down the field and win big games. You can't do that in big conferences like the Big Ten. The academies, they get away with it. Army, Navy, Air Force, because they all kind of play that kind of style of football. They all like to run the ball. But in big conferences, going up against Big Ten teams, you can't not have a quarterback that can not throw the ball. This Washington team should stack the box the entire game. If I'm Washington, I'm looking at the last 2 games from Michigan. I'd put 9 people in the box. Even if Michigan does spread it out 4 wide, you can just play man-to-man on the outsides. No deep safety needed. There's no reason for Washington to have less than 6 people in the box every single play in this game. I do think Washington's good this season. They've had a couple horrible fourth quarters over the last couple games that have cost them some wins, penalties, turnovers, mistakes late in the games, and just overall bad luck in the fourth quarter has caused them to lose back-to-back games. I do think Washington will be able to run the ball. I loved Jonah Coleman last week. He was really good. And I like Will Rogers. I know he's not great. He's coming out of Mississippi State, the transfer, but he can throw the ball down the field. Michigan can't do that. He can't make the right decision whenever he has to. And this Huskies defense, they've been good this year. Only 12.4 points allowed per game on the defensive side. I know the Michigan defense is good, but Jed Fish, he's going to have his guys ready to play. They've lost back-to-back games. They can't afford to lose another game here. Give me the Huskies, minus 2.5 as the play. Out of respect for Michigan, from what they did last weekend against USC, I'm going to take them to lose this game in a close battle. I kind of want to take a blowout here for Washington, but 24-16 in a low-scoring game in favor of Washington, minus 2.5 as the play there. Let's take a look at some props for tomorrow. For the first player prop of the day, we're going to be looking at one of the best players in college football, Ashton Jeanty, to go over 190.5 rushing yards against Utah State. It's ridiculous. I understand it's ridiculous. I'm not the one that makes the lines, but it does make sense because Boise State is going to dominate Utah State in this game, especially on the ground. A team who's giving up 218.7 yards per game on the ground. This, in my mind, is going to be a top 3 so far candidate for the Heisman Trophy this season. He's been so good through the first 4 games. His worst game was 129 rushing yards in the second game of the season. He's had 3 games this season over 200-plus rushing yards. I'm also kind of big on Oregon this season. I think the defense can be just as good as the offense, and he put up 192 rushing yards on that Oregon squad on 25 carries. So I don't think this one is out of the question for 200-plus rushing yards. Again, he's coming off a game against Washington State, putting up video game numbers once again. 26 carries, 259 yards to go along with 4 touchdowns. I watched the Utah versus Utah State game 2 weeks ago. We had Micah Bernard in that game, over 100 rushing yards. He went way over 100 rushing yards, and Utah, between the 2 running backs, they had 31 carries, 200-plus rushing yards, and I think Ashton can do that all by himself in this game. We're going to see a healthy dose of carries once again this week. He's gone 20-plus carries in 3 of the last 4 weeks. Give the man another 20 carries. He's going to have over 200-plus rushing yards once again. Over 190.5 rushing yards as the play there. For the next player prop, we're going to look at that Ohio State game and Iowa game. We're going to be taking Caleb Johnson, over 80.5 rushing yards against Ohio State. This seems really low for a guy of his caliber. He's gone over 100-plus rushing yards in all 4 games this season, and he hasn't really been close to going under the 100 yards. His worst game so far is 119 yards off of 11 carries in the first week of the year. He's coming off a monster game going up against Minnesota where he had 21 carries, 200-plus yards, 3 touchdowns. And knowing what Iowa wants to do in this game, I think he's going to get another 20-plus carries in this one. I think this is a little bit lower because of how good Ohio State has looked defensively this season at stopping the run. But again, they haven't played anybody so far. I could be way off on this. It's very possible. I've only seen Ohio State play one time against Marshall, and Marshall happened to go down the field and score a touchdown on them. But I don't think Ohio State's as good as people think they are because I'm not in love with the quarterback, Will Howard. I think he's horrible. They've only played 4 teams this season, none of them being close to the top 25, including 2 of the worst teams in the MAC conference to start off their year, and then Marshall, and then Michigan State's probably the best team they've played, and I don't think they're that good either. But again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Ohio State. They've played extremely well with the first 4 games, but I think it's too low of a number for Caleb Johnson. I'll take him to go over 80-plus yards as the play here, 80.5 rushing yards as the play. And for the last play of the day, on the player prop side, we're going to stick with the running backs. All the running backs, workhorses tonight. Oregon State going up against Colorado State. This guy's got a great name, Jam Griffin of Oregon State, to go over 93.5 rushing yards against Colorado State. Jam Griffin has been used in different ways this season, especially in the Oregon game, because he was only given 7 carries, but that's because Oregon State got themselves down early. He never had a chance to run the ball. In the game that Oregon State has either dominated or has been a little bit of a battle, he has recorded at least 18 carries in the other 3 games, having at least 89 rushing yards in all 3 of those games, going over 100-plus rushing yards in 2 of the 3. He's coming off his best game of the season, 22 carries, 137 yards going up against Purdue. And he's getting himself another chance here going up against Colorado State. He's giving up 430 yards per game to opposing teams, nearly 120 of those on the ground. I do expect Oregon State to win this game pretty easily, so I do think we're going to see a lot of carries in the second half, especially for Griffin. I don't even know if he's going to need the second half. I think this guy's explosive enough in the first half to get it done going up against this shaky Colorado State rushing defense. So I'll take his over 93.5 rushing yards as the last player prop of the day. Let's go take a look at some additional plays. We have 6 other plays we're going to be looking at. For the first one, going to go quick here. SMU going up against Louisville. SMU coming off a big-time win against Florida State, who is horrible. They beat them handily. They scored 40-plus points in that game. Louisville's coming off a disappointing loss after a hot start going up against Notre Dame. They lost that game by 7 points on the road. I think SMU's the all-around better team. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me how. I think SMU's the overall better team. The defense has their problems this season. I'll give you that. The offense, though, has looked great ever since they went to the 1-quarterback system. Kevin Jennings, the quarterback, he's now taking all the reps. There's no more Preston Stone in that lineup, which I really hate. I thought Preston Stone deserved the job, but Kevin Jennings has done better than him this season. That's just facts. They have looked really good in back-to-back weeks, dominating TCU, dominating Florida State. They're an explosive team, and I don't think Louisville can keep up. This is going to be an ACC showdown. I do expect SMU to score a lot of points. I'll take them here, plus 6.5 as the play. For the next play, looking at kind of a big matchup here, Rutgers going up against Nebraska. Rutgers is coming off a big win last week. They're undefeated this season, and it did take a lot for them to get that win against Washington. Like I mentioned, Washington, they struggled in the fourth quarter this season, made a lot of mistakes against Rutgers. They probably should have won that game, but Rutgers, they're undefeated for a reason. They came away with the win. Nebraska's coming off a poor performance going up against Purdue. I don't care that they won the game by 18 points. They were horrible in the first half. Everybody who watched the game, they were horrible in the first half. Back me up on that. I don't know if Nebraska is that good. I just don't know. Back-to-back games for Nebraska, they haven't looked great. They have the advantage of playing at home, which is really good for them. It's going to be a night game as well, I believe. So I know that place is going to be hopping. I know that place is going to be full of energy, but I think Nebraska to lose this game outright. This just feels like a Nebraska thing to do, lose this kind of game outright. I want them to be good because if Nebraska is a top 25 team, it just makes college football more fun. But I don't see a lot of separation between these teams. I think Rutgers defense can keep them in this game. They can muck it up. Rutgers loves to run the ball as well. So control the clock, run the ball, play good defense, plus 7 for Rutgers. That's way too many points in my opinion. So I'll take Rutgers there. For the next play, we're going to be looking at Colorado State going up against Oregon State. Already touched on this a little bit. I think Oregon State can blow them out. I'm going to take a minus 11.5. Oregon State, they're coming off a bye week after they beat Purdue pretty handily, winning that game by 17 points, putting up 38 on them. They had an additional week to game plan for Colorado State, and it's not a big surprise what Colorado State's probably going to do in this game. They're not great offensively, and Oregon State's really good on the ground, which could cause some problems because Colorado State defensively this season, if you look at anything positive that they've done, they have been able to stop the run just a little bit. But if I'm not going to be positive toward Colorado State, which I'm not going to be because I'm taking Oregon State, Colorado State, I'd say they're an all-around bad team. They're giving up 28.5 points per game, over 115 yards per game on the ground. The passing defense this season has been horrible. They're giving up 300-plus yards through the air. Oregon State's going to be at home in this game. They're coming off the bye week. They're going to be well rested. The defense has been good whenever they have to be. This Colorado State team's not good. Give me Oregon State minus 11.5 as the play there. For the next play, not going to take a lot of time here. Clemson against Florida State. The guy has not ate dog shit, and Florida State won, which is a double curse now. So that guy needs to eat dog shit out of a Red Solo Cup. Florida State just got their asses kicked against SMU. They allowed 40-plus points in that game. Clemson looked really good against Stanford. And I think Stanford's okay this season. They're not bad. They won that game 40-14. Not entirely sure if DJU is going to play this game for Florida State, the quarterback, which actually might hurt us because he's good for at least a couple sacks and a couple turnovers. But no matter who the quarterback is, Clemson minus 14.5. This is a horrible line for Florida State. I just don't understand how this isn't 28, 29, 30. So I'll take Clemson minus 14.5. This feels like a gift. And for the next play, we're going to look at Tennessee going up against Arkansas. This is a game that Tennessee is going to get it done in the air. It's time to let Nico do his thing. Tennessee has been getting it done on the ground for the majority of the season. They've been relying on that defense. They're relying on the run game. Arkansas this year, they've been pretty good at stopping the run. They've been actually very good at stopping the run. And Tennessee can take advantage of this Arkansas secondary. Defensively, I think Tennessee is up there with the best of them. They don't get a lot of credit for the defense because the offense has been so good over the last couple of years, but the defense over the last 2 years has been incredible as well. Tennessee minus 13.5. I think Nico has himself a huge day. And finally, Texas Tech going up against Arizona. A couple of Big 12 teams that are playing at 9:30 p.m. on Saturday night. I'm sorry if you're going to stay up and watch this game. Should be pretty exciting, though. I'm definitely going to have to have it on when I'm doing my notes for the NFL, but I see a lot of points scored in this game. Give me the over 63.5. The one thing I know about Texas Tech is that they're horrible defensively. Cincinnati last week, 555 yards of total offense in that game. They can't stop anything. Arizona coming into this game as the number one team in the country in the red zone scoring, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but those are the facts. This team, they can move the ball up and down the field. The defense this season for Arizona hasn't been great either, so I do think Texas Tech can get it some points. Nova Fita, the quarterback for Arizona, needs to take care of the ball. He can score 40-plus points on this Texas Tech defense. Two not-so-great defenses going up against two teams who love to put up points. Give me the run and gun. Give me the over 63.5 points as the play there. Let's take a look at all the plays. We have Missouri plus 2.5. Georgia minus 22.5. Iowa plus 18.5. Washington minus 1.5. SMU plus 6.5. Rutgers plus 7. Oregon State minus 11.5. Clemson minus 14.5. Tennessee minus 13.5 and over 63.5 in the Arizona-Texas Tech game. Ashton Genty over 190.5 rushing yards against Utah State. Caleb Johnson over 80.5 rushing yards against Ohio State. And then Jam Griffin to finish it all out over 93.5 rushing yards against Colorado State. Guys, it's going to do it for the NCAA football plays and props for Saturday, October 5th slate of games. If you guys enjoyed the content, please sure to drop a like in this video and subscribe channel below. See you guys next video, and thanks for watching.